Hello, welcome to Rose Floral School, the show. I am Catherine, and I'm excited for today. Today's going to be a little bit of a different show episode. I am making corsages for a wedding, and that's actually not what the episode is about. But I'm going to kind of have a chat episode where we'll talk about a topic, and while we're chatting, I'm going to be making the corsages. So whether you're on video or just listening, that is what is going to be going on today. So I'm hoping there's not going to be too much like extra scuffling noise, but I thought it would be fun to try something different, and so here we are. And I already dropped a piece of wire, so we're off to a great start. Let me grab that, if I can get it off the floor. There we go. So anyway, the topic that we are going to be talking about today is creativity. So creativity is obviously an important part of being a wedding florist. It is what I would consider a creative career, a creative field, obviously a super creative activity in general. But I think what I have seen is that sometimes people get this thought in their head, like creativity is so important, and it gets almost put on a pedestal, but it also gets a little bit misconstrued, in my opinion. I think sometimes we mix up creativity with almost like artistry, or I don't know, like it becomes like kind of commingled, which if you are an artist, if you are really good at artistry, then you probably are pretty good at creativity too. I think they are super related, but I don't think they're the same. So in my mind, artistry is kind of like that artful side of creativity, where it's, having that intuition to create beautiful line and form and, movement in an arrangement, and, the ability to push the envelope with the design principles and elements, and just try really different proportions, really, avant-garde color palettes, whatever it is, just kind of pushing the envelope in terms of the elements and principles of design. That's what I kind of consider artistry, but I think a lot of times that's what people think of as creativity. But creativity to me is all of those things, or it can, exist in the form of those types of things. But I also think creativity can include things like, figuring out a better solution to your delivery problem, or, playing around with different systems, and even like tweaking your contract, even just seeing that, time after time, you're having clients be hung up on something, or confused about something, or have the same issue. And it can be something as like non-artistic as the contract terms or the system for your consultations. And seeing that problem and fixing it. To me, that is, another form of creativity that sometimes gets overlooked, or like it isn't thought of as creative because it's not color and texture and line and, rhythm and pattern, but it's like black and white paper on a contract. So I think if you ever put yourself into this box of like, oh, I'm not creative enough, oh, I need to be more creative, I would first challenge what you are seeing as creativity. And to even take it a step further, I would confidently say, in my opinion, the creativity in those like problem solving sort of ways, actually, I kind of think is as important or more important than the artful creativity in a floral business. Now, if you are just working as a designer, and you're not doing the business operations types of things, CEO kind of work, you're just a designer, then the artful creativity, I would say would take the first seat. But as a business owner, yes, you need to know the art behind design, but having the creativity in your business, I think is more important. So kind of like we said earlier, things like solving your clients' problems, solving your own problems, being creative with your systems to try doing things a different way that makes it work better for you and saves you time and money and energy. I think those are the types of creativity that honestly a business owner, even in a creative industry, really needs. So, with that said, I think I do want to also mention one other part. If you are saying to yourself, like, oh, well, I'm not very creative, oh, I'm not very artistic, whatever the voice is, I also just want to talk for one little second. This could be a whole own episode, and maybe it will be, but just for 1 second, I want to talk about limiting beliefs. So basically, if you are totally new to the idea of limiting beliefs, in a nutshell, it basically is the idea, if you can even call it an idea. I think it's a truth, honestly, but the idea that whatever you think is basically true, or if it's not true, it becomes true. So if you think, oh, I'm not creative enough to be a wedding florist, well, then you never will be creative enough to be a wedding florist. You're putting yourself in that box and, writing yourself off in that case. And so, yeah, if you put yourself in the box that you're not creative enough, you won't be creative enough. If you just are assuming, oh, I'm not creative enough, I can't do this kind of thing, then why would you ever try? Why would you ever try to learn? And so if you're not trying and learning, then you're not becoming more creative, and you're not, shooting for that goal. And so you won't get it. So that's just kind of like the idea that what we believe about ourselves becomes true. And how we act is a lot of times dictated by what we think about ourselves or what we think about the situation. And if you already think, well, I'm not creative enough, like I said, then you're not going to do anything to try to make it any different. And so, like I said, I could probably go on and on about limiting belief and how strong it can be. But on the flip side, if you believe, I am creative, or I can be creative, or I'm becoming creative, then you're already, instead of like closing the door and just kind of limiting yourself, you are leaving that open-ended or making it that positive thing, and then you will live up to that as well. And like I said before too, also challenge your idea of what creativity even is, because maybe you aren't the best at colors or textures or whichever like artful type of principle it is. But if you can figure out an amazing way to make a product that solves a need for a customer and does it beautifully, you don't need to be the best at texture or whatever. So, and then on another note, any of your, I don't know, I guess that's always been like, that's like a great debate in life, is like, oh, can you teach like artfulness? Can you teach someone how to have an eye for design? Is it natural? Is it taught? Honestly, I mean, I don't know if it's still technically up for debate, but the thing about design too, like you could be the most creative, artistic, floral design artist in the world, but everybody has their own taste. Everyone has their own style. There's going to be someone that absolutely hates everything you make. No matter who you are, even if you're not the most creative artist, whatever, anything that you make, some people will love it and some people won't. And that's the beauty of just everyone having different taste and different style. And so I guess what I'm just trying to say with this is, don't get too hung up on being like the very best floral artist in the world, unless that's, just what you really want to be. But frankly, I don't think that title really can exist, because it's all subjective. Not only does everyone have a different taste, but everyone's taste is constantly changing and evolving. And, so I do think it's important to hone in on your own style and your own type of design that what elements you like to lean into and how you like to create. But again, don't let that be a barrier. Don't let that be something that becomes a voice in your head that's like, oh, well, I'm so horrible at putting colors together and, I could never do this. Well, you can practice it, you can get better at it. And also, again, the trends are going to change. The things will constantly be moving and cycling and changing. And so, colors that nobody likes right now, somebody does like them, first of all. And second of all, people's tastes are changing. So yeah, all that to say, don't get hung up on feeling like you need to be, the best at the actual art and craft of floral design to be a wedding floral designer. Now, you should have technical skills. You shouldn't, you can do what you want, but to have the foundational knowledge for your technical skills you have to be able to make the things, right? You can't just magically make a corsage without knowing how to make a corsage. But again, don't let it be a barrier. Okay, let's see. I'm trying to think what else. So, okay, other things that I want to talk about with creativity. And creativity as that like more blanket term, just basically finding different ways to do things to suit your needs. So when I was in college, I don't know if I've talked about this at all. So I do have a 2-year degree from community college, and it is for entrepreneurship and business admin. I forgot for a second. Anyway, and I did take a course, and of course I took a course, no kidding. I'll probably, sorry, now I'm just thinking ahead in my mind. I'm wondering if I should do an episode about just college in general, my background, and if you're trying to figure out what to do on that front. Let me know if anyone's interested in that type of episode. Let me know. But so I took a course in college, and it was called Creative Problem Solving. And honestly, when I signed up for it, it was probably a requirement, I'm assuming. And when I signed up for it, it just kind of seemed like this fluffy sort of a course. I don't know, it was intriguing. I was excited for it. I did think oh, this sounds kind of okay, cool, but a little fluffy, a little creative problem solving. What does that even mean? And I have to tell you, it was an awesome course. I think about that course not that often, but more often than any other course that I think I took in college. And I use things that I learned in that course still to this day. So I want to share a few things about that with you. And honestly, if you are in a place where there's a community college that offers some sort of a course like that, I would encourage you to take it, especially if this is something that you're kind of hung up on. But one of the things that we learned in the course was, this is kind of to my earlier point, but I'll get to some more meaty stuff in a second, but it was that creativity literally can be taught, which of course, here's a course in creativity that I was taking. So, but I could look this up if anyone really wants the sources, but there were studies done, and actually I'm pretty sure it was out of a college in Buffalo, one of the Buffalo State colleges, or Buffalo UB, or Buff State. But anyway, it was out of a college in Buffalo, which is the town that I live, or the city that I live outside of. And they found that you can teach creativity. So, it is a skill that you can learn and you can hone in on and you can get better at. And it's a skill that has different types. We're not all creative in the same way, but we all can become more creative. And so we learned a bunch of different techniques to foster that creativity and grow it, and just increase our creativity. And one of the things that we did all the time was brainstorming. She would give us these prompts, and we were constantly brainstorming. And what we learned about brainstorming, so if you're trying to come up with an idea for something or a solution for anything, you can do these brainstorming methods. So we learned that there are two types of thinking when you're brainstorming. There is divergent and convergent. And right now, I can't really remember which is which. I think divergent is where you're casting a broad net. So you're just trying to think of every single option that you can think of. And that's what we would do first. So we would get a prompt, and in your business, who knows? It could be, how do I make better corsages? It could be, what, captions can I use for my content on social media? It could be anything that you're trying to solve or figure out or whatever. And so you think about your topic. So we'll go with that. Maybe it's topics for my podcast episode. And I would think about that and spread a wide net. So write down, think of how many you need. Say I need 20 topics. Well, I'm going to try to think of 70 topics, like way more than I would ever need right then. And sit down and just as they pop into my head, write them down. And don't even think about, is it a good idea? Can that actually work? Will anyone don't think about anything except for getting as many ideas as you can think of. So just write down every single thought, and don't, again, no criticism on them, no, nothing. Because what happens is when your brain is in that mindset, just pumping out ideas, if you stop and start getting technical, but what would this work? How would I do that? And it shifts the way that you're thinking. It shifts your creativity and it kind of slows you down. And the other thing is, if you just keep going and shooting out all of these ideas, what ends up happening is one idea will domino effect to another, and somehow that will make you think of this other idea. And maybe the one idea that you started with that honestly was never going to work and it was too off the wall or whatever, it could spark, a chain of ideas that leads you to one idea that is perfect. But if you get hung up in that first stage in all the technical things, I don't know, is that really a good idea? If you start shooting it down before, you let your brain stay in that idea brainstorming phase, then you might not get to that further idea. So like I said, think of just as many as you can. And honestly, in your head, maybe think of okay, I need 20 ideas. Or maybe you literally need 2 ideas. Maybe you need 1. Maybe you're just trying to think of, I don't know, I'm trying to think of something, maybe you're trying to think of ideas for, tips that you can tell brides that are wedding planning. Maybe it's a content idea kind of a thing. And, you want to do 5 tips. Okay, so you're going to do an Instagram series, 5 tips about planning your wedding for brides. So you need 5 ideas. Well, in your head, maybe you think, instead of 5, I'll think of 20. Well, then add another 10. Think of 30 ideas and just brainstorm. And like I said, write down, just dump every single idea onto paper and get way more than what you need, because it will tumble you into other ideas that were below the surface. So then once you get to that number, and don't stop until you get there. If you were at 22, you need to keep going, get 8 more. So don't stop until you get to that number. And once you get there, now you can stop and you can start to look at the ideas and group them together. You'll kind of end up seeing there might be a common thread where maybe you have 3 ideas that actually can all kind of be rolled into one. Or, maybe you group them together and there's a group that just are too off the wall or don't make any sense. So you'll start to group them, and it's kind of weird, but you'll see there might not be a clear way to group them, but just force yourself to group them up into groups, and then something happens in your brain where it suddenly starts to make sense. Everything starts to click. You're like, okay, I can see that, going back to our idea of, captions for brides for tips to plan their wedding. Like I said, maybe it ends up just seeming here's a bunch of tips about the bouquet. Here's tips about picking colors. Here's tips about, bridal party size. And then honestly, some of those ideas, like I said, it might roll up into one. And so then now you've got these tips and they're really meaty and they're beefy and they're great. Or you have a whole list of, now your series is going to be tips about choosing your colors because you have 5 tips about choosing your colors. And now you've got 5 other post series like bankrolled that you've already brainstormed. So cool. But so yeah, that's kind of, and that's the convergent side. So then you start to narrow down, you start to group, you start to eliminate things that, maybe there were some zany ideas and you can start eliminating them now and sort of culling and coming back. And then what you end up with is your final, bank of ideas, and you've got your final plan, and you can be confident going forward because you know that you've uncovered every stone. You've thought through so many more ideas than you even needed to get to this perfect idea, and you'll be ready to go. So that is kind of like a brainstorming creativity exercise. And like I said, we did that all the time in this class. And you can do it with anything. You can practice with this. You can, we did like hypothetical scenarios in the class because, I don't know, that's how we practiced. And you can do that too, and just practice it. And the more that you do it, the better you'll get at coming up with ideas and just spitting out like, oh, I need a caption. Again, we'll go back to that. I guess that's just a nice, like, pretty common example that you might be dealing with. You'll be able to spit out caption ideas, boom, 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 because you've practiced making 50 of them every time you've had to have 5, or whatever it is. So I think that can just be really helpful. And, it trains the muscle memory. It trains your mind and your creativity just to be like an idea making machine. And that, I think, is what is important in business, to just come up with ideas and to find better ways and to find the best creative solution. And so I would just encourage you to continue honing in on your creativity and continue to explore that. And, to make sure that you're not limiting yourself or putting yourself in a box or putting, creativity into this like unattainable sort of a place where, it doesn't need to be, because you can do it. And we all are creative and we all can become more creative. So I hope that you enjoyed this episode. I'm going to get going on these corsages, but I hope that you have a great day. If you did enjoy this episode, feel free to like, subscribe, follow, whatever, do all the things. If you have a question or want to chat more, DM me on Instagram. It's Rose Floral School. And I will talk to you soon. Stay tuned for the next episode. Bye!